welcome everybody to Who's Your Band. I am Jeffrey Paul. I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Sean Morton. How are you, Sean?
Yeah, please don't lean into the camera like that. It makes your head look like a fucking basketball.
I'm still trying to figure out this whole thing.
Usually it's better for you if you have it off. Yeah. Just do the audio. Actually, if you can want to mute too, we can do muting as well.
It's been 2 years. I still haven't figured out Zoom.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, folks, Sean's got a big show coming up the day after St. Patrick's Day, March 18th, over at TIFF. So he'll be headlining. Joining him will be KP Burke and Lynette Palladino. So please get tickets and check out Sean Morton. But right now, we're going to welcome in our guest. This guy is a comedian. He's an actor. He's a writer. Please give it up for our buddy, Mr. Sean Donnelly. How are you, Sean?
Hey, how are you? How's it going, everybody?
We're good, man. You've been a pretty busy guy, huh?
Kind of. I think that I was busier before COVID. Things are kind of getting back to normal now, but I've been doing some road stuff. I kind of got, I don't know about you guys, but I got like burnt out on it for a while. So, and I think everything's changed so much, trying to like explore different avenues like podcasting, whatever else. So, but yeah, I've been trying to stay busy. I think it's so easy for all of us in comedy to forget that it's a business. Like I do it all the time where I'm like, oh, I should like be being more diligent with my time in comedy. Yeah. So I've been busy lately because I tried to like I've been trying to like actually send emails and work on stuff instead of just like kind of waiting for stuff.
Yeah, I know you as a comedian, like primarily as a comedian.
That's my primary job. Yeah.
Right. But I didn't know until I really looked into your background a little bit more, how much into acting you've gone. Like you've done Inside Amy Schumer, you've been on Billions, you've been on FBI on CBS. Is that a direction you kind of see yourself kind of like going in, as you're getting a little bit older?
I wish I would love to be into that. In that world, acting becomes like an added bonus. In comedy, I got a couple of things a certain amount of years, several years ago. So like from that, you get the auditions, and anything I've ever done, like I'm not a real actor. Like it's like comedian actor thing where it's like anything I've done for the most part is like super tiny roles in those things. So I would love to get thrown into that, get a bigger role and then get thrown into that world, because it's kind of like, I don't know, it can supplement stand-up. As we know, stand-up isn't a retirement strategy. So, so I absolutely would love to, I'd love to be in that world. I have a lot of respect for it. And I'm a big movie guy. And so I would love that, but it's kind of like, I don't know, when any of the things I've done, it's like winning a scratch off. You like can't count on it. Like you can kind of set up gigs after a certain point for stand up, but like you can't really count on acting stuff. It's kind of like found money when you get it. But I would love that. Yeah. And the older I get, I think I'll probably hopefully get more, because I kind of look older anyway,
Yeah, some guys go into writing like Mike Lawrence and Dan St. Germain, you know, and some guys kind of like gravitate more into acting. I guess like someone like Dan Soder, you're starting to see him get into more things like that. When I see you, I could see you do either one and being good at both.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, like you had the lead in it was a commercial. I mean, it was a commercial, but it was a prominent part in the commercial. Yeah. And like, it was funny, and like you could see your personality coming out in that. How often do you go out and audition, or where do you see, like, what's your end game in like 5 years from now?
Well, the more I think about what I've done, I stayed in New York because I was getting enough work here. But for the type of person I am, I probably should have tried LA a long time ago when I had maybe a couple more things going on. Like, and maybe like, I think the old plan was, you go out, get whatever in New York, go out to LA, and then be like a sidekick on a sitcom, and then maybe get into that world and bank that. But that's also like such a pipe dream. But like, so that was the old plan. Now, the way that things are, it's like I get less auditions than I used to. Even the commercial thing, I did that. It went well. It was really fun. Like those commercial guys have it made. You do, because we're stand-ups. That whole experience was like, it was so easy because we go and we do, even when you're going to travel for comedy, you guys know it's like, you're doing 5 shows, you're waiting for nighttime to work. So it's kind of weird. You can't like relax until you're done with that. That's the way I feel, at least. But like the commercial thing was like, you got there, it was travel day, but you get there in the morning, and then you have a whole day just to hang out in a nice hotel. They filmed that commercial I did in California. Then the second day is the fitting day. You go for an hour with a wardrobe person, and then you're good for the day. And then you shoot for a whole day, which isn't that bad. It's like 10 hours maybe, and then the next day is you take off. You fly out at a convenient time. It's like such a great world. And I thought from getting the one, I thought I'd be like, oh, I'll at least get some auditions from this. And it kind of like, I get them here and there, but it's not a ton. It's not, I have friends of mine, I think, that have like I think I have a very specific, like, blue collar dock worker look, almost like
absolutely
Mr. Morton over here. We kind of look very similar. And so I think there's like only certain things for me in that world, but I know guys that were like there's a comic, Luke Younger. I don't know if you guys know him, but this guy, Luke, he has like everyman look, and he's gotten like tons of commercials. My buddy Nick Cobb, I don't know if you ever met Nick. Nick gets tons of commercials.
Oh, Nick Cobb, he used to be in. He moved out to San Diego, I think.
No, LA. He's in LA.
Yeah. He moved out there a few years ago. I remember Nick.
Yeah, he's been there for a while, but I still talk to him. So, but I know for a fact, like, he gets a lot of auditions. He books a lot of stuff. I think it's because it's like he's also really, really funny, but it's like, oh, I think it just has a certain look of like the every guy. So the new plan now is like what everybody's doing. I think that there's, the diversity, there's a diversity course correction going on. So I think that's affecting things as far as like white dudes getting auditions. That does happen. It's not just made up. So I think that like lessens everything a little bit. So you have to kind of like, course correct. And I'm trying to do podcasting and a YouTube channel and all that, so that's like kind of the new plan. But yeah, if I was able to get on a show like that, man, you just tuck that money away if it lasts for a little bit, and then kind of go from there. I guess that would be the plan. But it's such a crapshoot,
Sure. It's like a natural progression, I think, for comedians to go into commercials, because think about who writes these commercials, right? It's usually like these ad guys. And, I think comedians are better writers than ad guys. So like when you go in for the audition, the thing that you need to really like focus on is, getting the name of the product. There's usually like one or two things that they really want you to do. You don't really have to stick to the script. It's not like when you're reading for a movie or a TV show where it's a writer and he wants his words the way they're supposed to be done. You have a lot more room to kind of like I said, improv and just get that part. And like, you're naturally funny, so I think you have kind of like a little more of an advantage than a regular actor in that world.
I think you're right. They did on that set. He did. The director was a nice guy, but he would do that thing where he goes, "You guys just go and you riff," and then me and the other actor were trying to do that, and he would kind of be shouting out lines from the back. And then at one point we were like, "Hey man, do you want us to keep going, or do you want to just tell us what you want us to do?" And then they do have a script supervisor there, so. If you do riff, they have to take it back sometimes and go, what did you say here, here, and here? She has to keep track of it, I guess, on paper as they're filming it. So yeah, they do want you to like improv, which we did, which a couple things from the actual finished product of that commercial were improv, but there's still kind of a structure to it where they're like, oh, we have to say the thing again so that she can jot it down or whatever. So yeah, but I, that was like the first. I did like voiceover on something else, and I did like an online thing once, but that was the first like only real commercial that I did. So it was like a really, really new experience for me.
Yeah, I got a friend out in LA I went to like grammar school and high school with, who I didn't realize how much like money there is to be made doing voiceover work and things of that nature. And he was the guy who did all those pistachio commercials.
Oh yeah, the
like,
brand with the bag
yeah, every single one of them. Like then I found out he was like doing a lot of stuff with like World of Warcraft and like all these like video games and shit like that. And then I just happened to go on Twitter or Facebook, one of those things, and I saw he had like 950,000 followers. I was like, Jesus Christ.
For voiceover stuff?
Yeah. And I was like talking to a friend of mine I mentioned something about a friend of mine, and he's like a real gamer nerd or whatever. And like my friend posted, like commented on something. He goes, how the hell do you know him? I'm like, oh, I've known him for 35 years. Dude, he's a voiceover legend. I'm like, I don't know. He's the fucking dude jumped off my goddamn garage when I was growing up. Like, I don't know. Yeah. There's a lot of money out there, man.
Oh my God. It's a ton. And the voiceover world, that's another one where it's like you get thrown into that. I've done a couple of those gigs. I did one for mobile, and it was just a radio thing. And I thought it was just going to be like one of those. There's some of them you don't make that much. You make like a few grand, and then that's it, whatever it is. But this one, I did it, and I was getting paid a few grand every like every 2 months for like a year. It was like actually, and it was out of nowhere. I was like, oh, I didn't realize it was actually a really cool commercial. It was for some Mobile One or something.
Residuals are pretty cool, aren't they, Sean?
Oh my God. Yeah. And it was with this guy who was an actual monster truck announcer. It was the other guy on the commercial. So he was like, I was dying to ask him to do my voicemail on my phone, but I didn't do it. But that world, that's another one where it's like you get a steady gig there, you're set. Like that bankrolls you. Yeah.
Well, I also heard that like a lot of people are getting pissed off in the voiceover world because like I guess celebrities are realizing now it's really, really easy money. Like if you put on any commercial now, you hear John Cena. John Cena does every goddamn commercial that you can imagine. It's like, all right, great. Now you've made $50 million wrestling. You made $100 million doing freaking movies. Now you're gonna make another 10, 20 million doing fucking voiceover work on top of it.
Yeah, just taking jobs away from people. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's a great gig though. If you think about it, you can just do it in your house. Set up a freaking closet.
That's like the Simpsons people. They've been doing it for 20, 30 years. And they all have their own like world-class studios in their house. So I guess they're just sent the stuff. They record it, send it in, and that's it. They're making, I don't know, they got to at least be making $10 million a year a piece. I guess.
Easy.
You know,
that's like a dream gig.
Another good world to go into is, I don't know if you've ever auditioned or ever done any like in-house industrial films. And that yeah, like that would be like training videos, things like when you go into stores and you see like they'll have videos up in the store, in hospitals. I did something for Northwell Hospital a couple of years ago, and I got to film it actually in Aruba, you know? So,
that's pretty great.
Yeah, it pays good. I mean, it doesn't really do much for high profile in your career, but I mean, as far as making money and keeping like the chains moving and, you know, just like getting that on camera experience, I mean, they're great vehicles to use.
Yeah, it's absolutely a great avenue to go down. And I've had like, I did one, it was an online thing for Chevrolet when the Lego Batman was coming out, and it was like Lego Batman was leading a focus group about the new Chevy Tahoe or whatever it was. And that was fun. Like I've done a few of them and it's like, oh yeah, it's a good little chunk of change. But when you get like what you're talking about, like those video game things, and then you're in that world, I mean, bounce around from gig to gig, it's like life-changing money. Yeah, it's like insane.
Sean, you have a pretty impressive like comedy resume as it is, man. I mean, listen, you've done Letterman, you've done Conan, The Last Comic Standing, The Tonight Show with Fallon. Let me ask, how nervous do you get before you actually get on these shows, and how often do you run your set?
You run the last one I did, and it was the first thing I did in a while, was The Tonight Show. And that was like a month ago. And I found out 4 days before I did it. And I ran it like 3 times a night before I went up pretty much. Didn't run the set the whole time, but I did make sure to do like a bunch of sets the 4 days before. Cause it was so like, I was emailing with the guy and he knew the set, but I didn't know that I actually was going to do it until the Tuesday before I did it. I get increasingly less nervous. So, and from the Letterman, I was super, super nervous. Like that was like
the first one you did, right?
First, yeah. Well, the first one I did was Adam Devine's house party, which I was also really nervous for. And that was like kind of a different setup. That wasn't like a late night thing. That was like there was a house party. That was the name of the show. And, so that one was kind of, I was still nervous because it was a TV thing. It was a big deal. It was like, this was like 10 years ago or something like that. And then Letterman was technically after that, but it aired before because they taped Divine, you know, and then they aired it like, 3 months, 4 months later. So Letterman really nervous. And then every late night set since then, I've gotten less and less nervous. So Conan a little bit less nervous. Colbert was actually the best scenario because I already did a couple, and also they did it where they do like a showcase show setup.
I heard about
this
that.
Is how these late night shows, some of them do. I think Ferguson used to do it where they come in on Friday or something, and then they'll just tape a bunch of comics and plug in the sets where they need it, and they must play the tape the night of whatever show they put it on. So, but it's like, if it was my first one, I'd be bummed because some of the people that were on the showcase, it was like their first, and they were like, I think they thought he was going to be there. And I'd be bummed too. But I'll be honest, like as far as comedy goes, it's perfect because like Paul Mercurio was hosting it, and then it's just like, I don't know, 6 or 7 comics, and I went up like 3rd or 4th. So you just feels like you're at a stand-up show at a theater. Like it doesn't even feel
Is there
like
an audience?
It's like the pressure of a late night show. What?
Is there an audience?
There's an audience. And what I was worried about, which I asked them, I go, do they know that they're coming just to see stand-ups? Like, how disappointing are they getting barked off the street going, hey, you want to see Colbert? And they just show up and it's Donnelly and a bunch of comics just going up and doing their sets. And like, where's the famous guy? Like, where's the guy? So yeah, that was actually ideal comedy wise, but you don't get the full like late night show experience. So and then Tonight Show, you're still, I think anything like that, you become more like, just not anxious, like ramped up more than like, I wasn't really nervous. I was just like, and then at Tonight Show, they had me go for the and nobody ever did this. And it's such a smart idea beforehand. You go and you run when they're doing the sound check and the lighting stuff, they're like, the booker was like, do your set during that. And that actually helped me because there was nobody there. It was like two producers and the cameraman. And I'm like, oh, if I get anything from them, I'll feel okay about the set. And then once I got a couple of pops, I was like, okay, I'm not as nervous as I was when I got here. So yeah, it's like increasingly you get more used to it. It's like that kind of thing. But I think with TV, you're like, especially with a late night set, you're still like, well, I don't want to screw this up. Sure. So you still have that thing in the back of your head.
I think
the last Comic Standing was also like a theater show thing.
Right.
And then and you never know what they're going to air or if they're going to air it at all. And on the last Comic Standing, they only aired like one joke. So that's like, but I wasn't even nervous for that because that was kind of just like a party theater setup. And it was a fun audience, but you still are, beforehand, you're just in your head. Like any like big set you have, even without TV set, where you're like, I pace like a maniac before any big set. So
I remember like when you did Letterman, I remember being really excited for you and everything, right? And just like seeing you around, like and seeing you around New York. I mean, you're the guy who always wears like jeans and a flannel and a baseball cap. Now you're on Letterman, and that was the first time I ever seen you look like respectable. It looked like you were coming from court. Okay, so now let's put that in perspective. You're doing your first real big, it's Letterman. It's legendary. Okay. Yeah. And so, the nervous train is hyped a little bit more. And now you have to put Sean Donnelly in a suit. Yeah. Yeah. That definitely added to it. And then what didn't help was that the mic pack they gave me, they put behind my tie. So it was moving the tie over. It was the wire was pulling the tie towards my pocket, and I was kind of bugging out about that a little bit. So I went up naturally to the sound guy and I was like, "Hey, can we do something about the pack? Because it's pulling my tie over and it looks crooked." And all he does is just takes his hand and tries to push the tie back to normal, and it goes back. And he's like, "I don't know." I'm like, all right, man, thanks for your help. That is the biggest moment of my life to this thus far. So I do the set. The set goes pretty well. Letterman comes up at the end and fixes the tie. He literally, when he says hello, he's like, "Oh, good job," and then fixing the actual tie. So that was kind of funny. It's kind of a weird, unique moment. But me in a suit, like I don't have the type of vibe that I should be in. If you see me in a suit, you're probably thinking like, where's the funeral? Like I'm not a suit guy by any means. I don't think I give off that vibe. So yes, it was the first time I've dressed respectably. I
hate doing it too, man. I'm the same way. I'm like jeans and just a button down. I remember one week I had to work the Borgata for a week, and I'm working with Greg Morton. I don't know if you ever know who he is. He's like a road comic. I think
I've met him like a couple of times. Yeah.
Funny guy, does a lot of impersonations and stuff like that. And like the first night, like you have to wear a jacket every night there, which is a pain in the ass to begin with. But like the first time I'm there, I'm wearing like jeans and like my Converse. And the next night I'm like, I'm going to get really dressed up for this show. I had like family there and stuff. And I put the jacket on. I put these like boots on that had like no traction underneath. And Greg asked me to help him with his last bit. His like the last bit is like doing this James Brown thing where like he runs out, I throw the cape on him, and he runs back out. I throw the cape on him again. And the third time I got to drag him out. And now, mind you, there's probably, Music Box holds like, I think 900 or 1,000 people. There's a good 800 people there. I mean, it's fucking, it's full. It's full. It's
packed. Yeah.
And the last time I'm the first night I drag him out, no big deal. I got my sneakers on. Second night I got these boots on, and I'm dragging him out off the stage, and I feel myself going down. I'm like, oh, I'm falling, like, because I had no traction. And then I got right to the curtain and I went down, and I had Greg on my arms and I brought him down with me.
Oh no.
And my family's like, all you saw is my fat little feet in the air from the side of the curtain like this. And he jumps up, he goes, bro, that was fantastic. He goes, can you do that again tomorrow? I'm like, know that wasn't planned, right? Like, no fat guy ever plans on falling, number one, and then never plans on falling in front of fucking 800 people on top of all of that. Yeah. Never again. I never got dressed up again on stage. Ever.
What I love about Sean is, Sean Donnelly here is, you had this joke early on, and this is what was going through my mind when I was watching you on that Letterman set. Do you remember? I think it was one of your opening jokes. It's like, you've been here before. You're the guy. You're the guy who delivered the beer.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And
that's the opening joke was manual labor face. Yeah.
Right. And it's such a complete departure for you to wear the suit. But I want to also ask you, how long does it take you to get down a bit to like say, hey, this is going to be my TV5, and like, this is what I feel comfortable going forward with? It's for me. I don't write as much as I should. I wish I was more diligent with that. I've been trying to get better. So for me, it's whatever works together. So it's whatever is working best. That's the newest that I have going on. And then if I know I'm going to attempt the late night set, I string it together the best way possible. And if I can get that order down and it works, that whole process, like this past one, because I contacted him and I thought it would take a little while, but I kind of knew the guy. So right away he was like, yeah, send me a tape. So I was like, oh, okay, so I rushed it. So it was like a week or two of me working on it. And then he was like, can you send me a transcript of what it would be? So I threw it together and I connected it there. So I'm like way better on the fly than I am like molding the set. And then as far as bits go, I'm the type where I'm like, I hate the fact that I do this. That's why I have so many short jokes, because I go until the laugh comes and I'm like, okay, that one's done. How about the next one? Like, it's like that kind of thing. So the way I have to construct it is like, this kind of works. So a bunch of tiny, I had on this past set, I had a bunch of tiny jokes of stuff that happened this year. So the year is what kind of put together the set. So the whole set put together is probably the prior like 6 months, because I don't write enough. Like, it's not like super new. So to make the whole set, each joke is like different and it changes as it goes, and I'll add and take away and forget. So, but as far as like that, the late night set went for the last one, that was about 6 months put together. And the first one I did was a while, because it was like a bunch of my best jokes in the prior, like, I don't know, 4 years or whatever it was, because I hadn't done any late night set. So I kind of was like relying on that same, because I think when you start in New York, because I started here, you're worried about, you have a rude awakening when you start going on the road, because you learn how to like kind of master the 5 minute set. You can kill for 5 minutes. And that's why it lends itself so well to late night sets. But when you go on the road, you're like, oh, not that you don't have the other material, but you're like, oh, I'm only doing tops, especially your first 5 years into comedy. I'm only doing like 10-minute sets. So I don't have the time where I'm like, I can stretch out and it's a 25-minute feature set on the road. And I started doing comedy. I would just do it in the city, and I would like do like local road maybe, but not a ton of it. So when I left my day job, that's when I started doing more road, and I realized my New York jokes won't work, and I have to figure out a way to like string all these longer sets together instead of just like these tinier chunks that I was doing beforehand. So I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, you kind of like, I still have that I've been doing it for 16 years. And I still have that mindset like, oh, I'm working on it 5 minutes at a time. Where did you just start?
Interesting.
I started in the city. I was I wanted to start. I'm from Long Island, yeah. Okay. And I wanted to start. I was gonna maybe start in Long Island, but I never had the ball. I didn't start till I was 28. I didn't.
Oh wow.
I wanted to since I was like for a long since I was like 20. I was like, I want to do this, and I was like, just didn't have the balls. And then the closest I got to doing it at Long Island, I walked into a open mic, saw everybody writing the notebooks, and just like got freaked out and walked right out and didn't start for like 4 years after that.
Oh shit!
So I started at a open mic called at Maui Taco on like 5th Avenue and 32nd Street. It was like a Maui Hawaii themed taco place that was around the corner from a show that I used to help out with, and I just like hand out flyers and not go up. It was like the dumbest thing. It was Joe DeVito's show at Jack Dempsey's, and Joe, I credit him being the reason that I do stand up because he told me I was already there helping out with the show. And he goes, hey, I think when the show starts, he's like, I don't know if you know, there's an open mic around the corner at the taco place. You should go check it out. And if you think you can do it, you should go the next week and do it. So I was there anyway, every week. So Joe is like a big reason about why I do comedy.
Oh, wow. Awesome. I never even knew that. That's an interesting connection there with. Do you remember the first time you actually got paid to do comedy?
Yeah, I think it was one of those road things I just spoke about with Nick Cobb, who's a good buddy of mine. He was the one who got me all my first road things. And I think it was like I think the first set I got paid for, and it was outside New York, was a joint bachelorette party. It might have been in like Jersey somewhere or somewhere not far from here, but definitely a ride. And instead of them, I think they were older, they were getting married. They weren't going to have like the separate parties. So they had me and him, and I had to do a half hour. And I don't think I had it at the time. I think it was like 3 or 4 years in the comedy. And Nick was like, you can do a half hour. I'm like, sure. And we did it. And I think that was the very first time I got paid for comedy. And I think I probably made like $100 or something.
And how did it go?
It went really well, actually. I will say I remember being I talk about nervous. I was like so nervous, and I remember thinking, okay, that actually went really well. It was a fun night. It were good. You know, I was 4 years into comedy. You're like you're whatever. You're like okay. It's like but I definitely remember them being so nice that you could like go with it. But that was like Jesus. That was like how many years ago? 12 years.
So you were in comedy for 4 years before you got paid. Anything? Wow.
Because I didn't go in through the clubs. I would do a lot of bar shows and stuff in the city. I had a day job. I used to work at an insurance company doing like facility stuff, and then I would leave at 5 and then go do spots until 10, open mics, and then bar shows or shows in Brooklyn and stuff like that. And then I started running my own shows, and then ran one at a club called Comics downstairs in this place called Ochi's, and all that was like free. We would run a free show on Saturday. So I didn't get paid in the city for a while or on the road for a while because I was like I had that day job. I wouldn't be able to pay my rent if I was relying on just comedy at that point. Like I think a lot of guys you meet on the road, they're like their rent is like $600, $500. So they're like, yeah, I can just go feature places and get my rent in 2 weeks, whatever it is. But I couldn't do that because even back then when my rent wasn't that bad, because 16 years ago, it still wasn't enough. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have like the ins of clubs. And then I think I got, because of the girl from Comics, this girl, Kim, who doesn't work in comedy anymore, I got into Stand Up New York. And then from Stand Up New York, got into the Stand. And then because of Stand Up New York and one of their shows, that's when I got into hosting at the Cellar and stuff like that. So clubs came later. I was doing a lot of bar shows.
I also remember, Sean, you were, because I saw it on television. You were in the Final Four at Caroline's.
Yeah.
And was that the year that Adam Newman won?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, right. And who were the other people? You, Adam Newman. Who else was that? I remember everyone wound up doing really well.
It might have been Kevin Barnett. I forget. I actually forget. It was a really fun show. I forget who the other people. It was so long ago. I forget who the other people. But I know it was Adam because it was me and Adam versus each other on that night, on the finals night.
The one year that I did well in it, it was COVID, and they stopped the competition.
Oh, get out of here! Oh yeah, because it's March.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
so
I was going to
years ago.
The Sweet 16.
Are they bringing it back?
I don't know. I mean, Ray Goots used to run it, and then they tried to get Linda Smith, and they didn't bring it back this year. That's for sure.
I know it'd be a weird thing where you would have agents and then people on it were represented by agents were judging it, and the agents that were judging it, their clients were on it.
It's so stupid.
It was a conflict of interest.
I feel like I'm like the odd person. I'm like the odd person out in the show because I don't do city spots a lot. Like Jeff will attest to this. I don't ever. I mean, if I do them twice a year, it's a lot. And my path was so different. My path was so different on comedy. I was on the road like 5 months in. I was hosting, for like a year and a half, 2 years on the road.
Yeah.
And then got stuck in feature hell for like, 7 or 8 years, until like, finally people were starting to give me the bump up to close and stuff. But like, if I do a show in the city, like I'll do 7 minutes. I don't know what to do.
Right.
Like that's what
I'm saying. Like
that's very hard.
I don't know. Like even the other night I did a show in Asbury Park and I was closing it and it was very different for me because it was a bar show and I haven't done a bar show in years, but it was so noisy and it was so like different from anything I've been doing for so long. I threw the material out. I was just doing crowd work for like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Even then I'm looking at my watch going like, I'm just getting warmed up and it was like 30 minutes in and I was like, shit, I got to wrap this up. So my path is a little different.
Well, it's like I think that's the two sides of this thing. I think the same way that there's a lot of people who just stay in the city and like you don't really learn how to do this fully unless you're doing both sides of it. So,
yeah, I get it.
So yeah, it's like the same way that I was like when I started doing the longer sets, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is a new thing to learn. It's the same way that you come off the road, and you're like, ooh, 5 minutes. That's like me just riffing in the beginning of the set because I have to fill the time. So you have a different like muscle with it, I think. But also what I feel like what you just described is like one of those bar shows that can be like complete ambush or like where there's nobody policing anything. And they're just brutal. And it's like, that's just a survival tactic. I've done that a million times where you're doing the whole thing crowd work because you're like, well, this is the only way I'm going to get you to pay attention. And then you either just go with that or you try to sneak stuff in the middle of it and I've gotten, I you know what I hate about those is like, I hate the idea. I think that the set should be selfish. I think when I've hosted a lot in my career and I think that's the selfless part of stand-up. And I think that if you're hosting a show, I think you should, not that you're not going to do your jokes and maybe try something new, maybe, but I mean, you should kind of lend yourself to making the show better by doing the correct job of hosting. Absolutely. And I think if you're doing a set, you should have that. A show should always set you up for the luxury that you're going to listen to me because it's about me too. It's not just about you. It's like, I want to get out what I want to get out. And I used to be where I'm like, oh my God, I have to crush every second of like I was afraid of silence. I was afraid of all this stuff. And only fairly recently have I been like, okay, let me do something for me and not worry about it. And do the peaks and the valleys.
I feel the same way. I'm just in that comfortable zone now where I don't feel like I have to be on a script every single night. Like I'll write out like where I want to kind of go. And like, if I have a new joke, I'm going to pepper it in here. Like the other night I did a new joke. I did not think it was going to, I had no form to it. I just had the idea and I went out and like, even at this bar show, I tried it and it got a fucking roar. I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest fuck. Like sometimes you get caught up in the monotony of the show where like, if you're going to host, you're going to mill, you're going to feature. And like, you kind of had that whole mindset of where you're going to go. And I kind of threw that away the other night and it felt good. Like, it was kind of like just getting out of my comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah.
I loved it, man. Like now I'm in a very weird spot right now because I was one of those guys who taped stuff way too early. Like I think it was like a year in. I'm like, hey, I'm recording my first CD. And like people are like looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? And of course it was atrocious, And I did like 2 of them and I never put them out. But now I'm ready to tape my hour. And I don't know what I want to do yet because I've been doing like for the last 3 months, every show I'm doing, I write out a different, depending on how long I'm doing, whether it's 20, 30, 45 an hour, whatever, I'm writing out a different set and I have over 2 hours of material and I have no idea what I want to do on this hour.
This is good therapy for you, Sean.
Why is it therapy?
You're talking it out. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure out where you're gonna go in your career.
Your therapists cut off the fucking patients too when they're talking though. Is that what they do? Fucking prick.
Well, but you do. You say you don't do that many spots. I think, right? You said you only do a couple spots a year or something.
Yeah, I don't ever work in the city. Like I'm in the Friars Club.
You meant the city. You didn't mean outside the city.
No, I mean I never work in the city. Like I very, very rarely. Like I was past the not Caroline's at Dangerfields. That's fucking done. So like I don't have that luxury of just popping in anywhere. Like, Jeff works fucking 5 nights a week in the city. You know what I mean? So he can do whatever he wants. So like I kind of have to wait towards the weekend to try out the new shit. And sometimes it sucks, but sometimes it works out well. But
that's kind of what it is. It's like better than not doing that. Like I think it's I think you definitely, I think paring it down is, it's always hard to do that if you have so many thoughts, but I think it's also, it's good. It's going to sound fresh to you because you're excited about it because a lot of it sounds new. So that's like, I think that's what somebody else was telling me that they're like, oh, even if it's like I tried to do that recently too, where it's like, even if it's a joke you've been doing for a while, if you can say it a different way or something like that, if, like you throw in an extra word so that it doesn't, because I think there really is an unspoken thing that happens with the crowd where they can, like on a molecular level, tell that you are hating telling a certain joke because it's so old. But I think they're just catching a vibe off you that you don't even know you're giving off.
Yeah, I get that a lot, dude. I have one joke that like I keep saying my niece just turned 18. I'm like, what? She's fucking 31 now. Like I really, I gotta stop doing the joke. But it's one of those jokes, like like if you're having like a mediocre set. And like, it's not going as well as you want. I will bring that joke out because I get an applause break every fucking time I do this joke. So it's kind of like stroking your own ego a little bit too. But then like you don't want to because you want to do other shit on top of it. It's the weirdest fucking job we have in the world.
Yes,
in the world.
Yes.
I look at the work ethic of certain comics, and Sean, I put you in that category of guys like Mike Lawrence and Dan St. Germain, Anthony DeVito. And the thing that comes back to you is I remember you used to host the open mic at the Stand when it was on 3rd Avenue.
Did I do that?
You were the first open mic host, and you were already kind of like an established comedian. And when I look at guys like yourself, and like I said, like Mike Lawrence, who would be like doing 3 shows at Greenwich, and then I remember running the room at Village Lantern, and he would come over. He's like, "Hey, can I get on for 5?" It's like, man, you only got 3 spots, but you're going to come over. And then like I would see him during the week was on, I think it was on either Mondays or Thursdays. I was also running a mic at McSwiggan's. It was Mondays at McSwiggan's. And I would see, everybody would come in there, like Greg Stone and James Madden and Dan and I'm like, these guys, man, they're on the road and they're like real comics, but they didn't have ego. It was just about getting the reps in and working, getting the sets in. And that, that is something I think like every young comic that takes stage time for granted needs to see.
I think that's definitely a good attribute to have. I think the whole idea, I think it also, I think stand-up is different than I think you have show business, and I think you have stand-up as a separate entity. I think that stand-up is like the street fight level of this business, and that's why if you're going to find you're going to find the most humble people. You're going to find a lot of people who are up their own asses, but you're going to find a lot of humble people that are just trying to do the work and do it for the love of doing it, even though that can be really hard to deal with. There's so much rejection and so much bullshit that accompanies it. At least you have the moments of being on the stage and like doing something that 99% of the population won't do. And it's like the stand-up's the thing I've been, before I did stand-up, I was doing like these bullshit jobs. It's the thing I've been the most successful at. So I'm like excited about that. But like the flip side of it is you're constantly chasing that white whale of like, oh, I just want to get better. I just want to get better at this. And the ones, to be honest, the ones who aren't doing that, so what you can notice is like they kind, if you don't have a bit of self-awareness in this thing, you kind of become bad at it. And I've seen it happen, and you see guys fall off and quit, or a lot of guys quit and then come back. And so it's like like an ever-changing thing. The way the business is now is so different. It's kind of discouraging for some people that like, so I could see people getting nutsy about that. But like, but as at its core, I think it's a pretty pure. I think it's the last meritocracy in show business is an actual live stand-up show. Like,
you think so? Well, a live stand-up show, not advancement career,
not advancement in career, not show business. Like
because then there'd be no explaining Hannah Gatsby.
Right. But no, but I mean, like when you had that story about Seinfeld, the show had just ended. And it was one of the biggest stars on the planet, which he still kind of is. He's like a house, he's just part of the fabric of pop culture. But like, and apparently there's a story that he went to Gotham, and they gave him 5 minutes of grace to just kind of talk off the top of his head, and then they were like so excited, laughing. And the minute that 5 minute mark hit, they're like, okay, now make us laugh. The biggest show in the world, and he couldn't get 10 minutes of him just bullshit. So it's like, yeah, when you kind of have to deliver, or you kind of just get, I think, I think it's very evident if you like what your mindset is in comedy. There's so many moments. I think people have their own ideas of what this is, but like how you do on stage matters. And there was a long time ago, I did a show. I bombed so badly 2 days in a row. I used to bark for the Village Lantern. It was Colin Kane's show at the Village Lantern. And it actually wasn't a bad gig for barkers, because he would go off for like a half hour, and some of the people thought the show was done and would leave, but like 25 people would stick around, and you'd bark for an hour and get like 5 minutes in front of a real crowd. I was like 5 or 6 months into comedy. And I remember one night I bombed so bad that this guy just said to his friend next to him, he was like, this guy stinks. He just said it like quietly, like he wasn't heckling at all. He was trying to be polite and tell his friend, but it was so quiet in there. I heard it, and people, it was like so bad. So the next, I bombed that night. What?
Did it crush it?
Did it? Oh, no, get a laugh? No, people just like heard him and were like,
no, were you crushed inside? Were you like, oh, fuck, how do I come back?
Yeah, it was devastating. I don't know how I kept going. And then the next night, same thing. It was a bad bomb. And the other barker comes up to me and he's like, good set, man. I'm like, what are you talking about? Just ate my dick. And he's like, no, but that's what comedy's about. It's about bombing. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, no, it's not. It's not about bombing. You bomb, it's part of it, but it's not about, that's not your one, not your desired result, you maniac. So I think that some people get into this and then they decide. It's very easy early on to decide that, hey, I figured this out, which everybody does. It's at a certain level, I think.
I think one of the worst feelings I ever had is like when you're on the road and like you're doing like these clubs on the road, and then towards the end of the show they make you stand outside and like say you do the shake hands of all the people that are walking out and stuff like that, or like the headliners selling merch, and like I'm middling at this point, and they go up, the headliners right at the end, like, oh my god, great set, it was so fantastic, that's awesome. Goes up to the host, wow, you did great, and they look at you and they go, and they just keep walking past you and not say a word to you. That happened to me once in Hartford. I swear to God, I almost bailed on the second show. I almost bailed on the second show. That's how fucking defeated I felt after that. And it was, I didn't even bomb. Like I didn't do great, but like it wasn't like one of those fucking like that fart that just hangs and lingers. It wasn't one of those. I was just in my own head. And man, they can fuck you up, dude. They can fuck you up, crowds.
And 100%. I've had it where I've been same exact situation. But the guy he didn't say anything. He didn't say nothing. He went, have a good night, man. Like, he was like, you're amazing. You're the best comic I've ever seen. Have a good night, man. Like that. Like, I'm at the point now. If you don't say anything to me, that's fine. Or you say, have a good night, and it's fairly innocuous. If you say something shitty to me after a show because you didn't like it, I will make it as uncomfortable for you as possible. I'm at that point. I used to just glad hand it and go, all right, thank you for coming. And now I will full on fight you. I'll fight you. Like, why can you make me feel uncomfortable? I can't make you feel uncomfortable back. And that happened to me in Tampa recently. Some guy, they liked the other comic better, and they went up to him and they were like, we liked him better than you. And I was like, fuck you. Keep going.
What
keep walking.
Dick thing to say.
Oh yeah. And they look back like smiling. I go, I'm not smiling. I go, fuck you. Take off.
I fuck with people too all the time. Like, someone will say to me, like, you know what I would have said, and I'd be like, please don't say that. I just had a stroke 6 weeks ago. I forgot my act, and like I'll say fucking horrific shit like that just to make them feel even worse. Oh, I love it.
I go one time really quickly. It's related to this. I was in Virginia at a theater. The show didn't even start yet, and they had posters up for the show, and it was like a small theater in I forget the area, and it was near Charlottesville, but not Charlottesville. And this couple comes up and they go, "You're the guy," and I go, "I'm the guy. How are you?" This is before the show, and they go, "Are you funny? You better be funny." And it was like I must have been in a bad mood. I went, "No, I'm not. I'm sorry." And they go, I go, I'm not kidding. I've been doing comedy a month. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm really nervous.
Oh my God, I do the same shit. I did that like a month ago. Somebody came up to me, they go, wow, that was good. I mean, do you get nervous going up there? And like, the other guys were really, really good, but like, do you get nervous? I was like, well, here's the thing. My twin brother is actually Sean. I'm actually John Morton. He has laryngitis, but I've heard his act so many times. I figured, let me just try and kind of bail him out a little bit.
Parent Trap, but for comedy.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love fucking with people.
Funny.
Before we wrap this up, because we've been talking here for about almost 45 minutes, we haven't even gotten into any music yet.
We never do.
I know, but
I'm just following your lead.
It's called Who's Your Band, and I could talk to you for another hour. But you're a big Van Morrison fan, right?
I like Van Morrison a lot. I concentrate on early Van Morrison more than the later, but I listen to all of it. But Astral Weeks is one of my favorite things in the world.
What I love about Van Morrison as a songwriter, and along with a guy like Bob Seger, is they write songs to write good songs, not to write a song with an agenda attached to it, where it's to sell records or to get on the charts. Or they write a good song because it's a good song.
Yeah.
If you kind of follow that, my wedding song was "Have I Told You Lately?"
Oh, great song.
And I think probably one of the most beautiful romantic songs ever written by anybody is "Into the Mystic."
That was my junior prom theme song.
Wow, that's a good memory that you remember that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I don't remember much after that, but
Into the Mystic is fantastic. You know what's so funny is, I think it's just Van Morrison's in my top 5, probably in my top 3, if not favorite artist of all time. But one of my least favorite songs in the world is Brown Eyed Girl, because I think there was a time where, especially when radio was still kind of a thing, where it was like live, everybody's listening to radio all the time. I probably heard that song about 100,000 times in my life. Like you couldn't escape that song. That I got to the point where I can't stand it, but I do. He is one of my favorite artists. But I went to a show when I used to be married, and I think it was before we got married. My wife got tickets to see him in Connecticut at Foxwoods. This is like 10 plus years ago, whatever it was. And man, oh man, is it an old person concert? They start at 8, they're done by 9:30.
I gotta tell you, man, my 2 worst experiences in my life for a concert. The first one of all time, worst show I ever saw in my life was Bob Dylan. It was the worst concert
I heard
ever
about
saw.
this.
And half the crowd left. But I gotta tell you, second worst show I ever saw in my life was Van Morrison.
Well, I will say this.
I love him.
Yeah, the show itself was actually, he sounded like pitch perfect, and I was like, that was great. But he started it and ended it, and he was just he was sitting on a stool the whole time, and there was a guy at one point he was doing a solo, the guitarist was doing a solo, and you could hear Van Morrison. He's such an old curmudgeon. You hear him in the background going, come on, faster, come on, fast, let's go, come on, like just yelling at the band.
Yeah, like when I saw him, he had just put out, I think it was not a country album, but it was like a very different type of album for him, like maybe 10, 12 years ago. And it was at the theater at MSG. And again, 8:00 start, no opening band, goes on, plays the whole new record, and does, I think, Moondance and one other song. And it was an hour and 2 minutes he was on stage. And I was out the door by 9:10.
It's so great.
It was so fucking horrible. I'm looking, I'm like, this really just happened. Like we just spent $300 and this just happened. Right.
Yeah.
Same thing with Jerry Lee Lewis. I saw my mom had a crush on Jerry Lee Lewis for 60 years. I took her to Town Hall and he starts at 8:00 and it's like at 8:35. He's like, I know you want to hear all the old stuff, but I got a new one for you. He plays a new song. I'm like, fucking crickets, because nobody wants to hear a new Jerry Lee Lewis song in 2014. No. You want to hear Great Balls of Fire and a whole lot of shaking. And he got no response. What's that?
How was he not dead by then?
At this point, right?
I know he should be dead now, but he got the song out and he maybe got 10 claps and he was like, you don't like the new songs? You ain't getting the old ones. And he got up and he fucking left.
No, he didn't.
35 minutes, 8:00 to 8:35, and the whole place is looking at you like, what the fuck is happening?
Did they turn on the lights?
Yes. Like they waited a good 4 minutes thinking like maybe he's just fucking with people. But then it's like the lights come on and this boo. I mean, it's like watching your set and here in the crowd, Jeff. It's deafening. Deafening. I mean, I remember reading a review the next day. He was just like, he lost his mind. He wanted to play a new song. He didn't like the reaction and he just fucking left.
Did people demand their money back?
People were screaming, but again, this is like it was $300-400 I spent on these tickets and 35 minutes. Could not believe it. God. Yeah, I had some bad concert experiences. Let me tell you,
that's really bad.
The other Van Morrison story that I heard was my friend Colin, who's like from Ireland, and I guess he's from Dublin. I guess Van Morrison must have lived there for a while. They said that when he was a kid, Van Morrison lived right near his school, and they'd be playing soccer on the field, and in the middle of the game, like a full game with a crowd and like a school sanctioned game, he would just walk in the middle of them playing, just stroll right in the middle of the field, and they'd have to be like time, and then wait for him to go, and then just shuffle along, and then pick up with the game.
He does look like that old cranky fucking person.
He does. He absolutely does. Yeah, I think I heard the other thing I explained. I don't know if it's him or somebody else that he has stage fright as well. I don't know if he's one of the ones that has stage fright.
I never heard that about him.
Yeah, somebody does, and I can't remember who. It's somebody around from that time period. But no, but even with all that and all that bullshit, like he is Astral Weeks is. I listen to it on like at least once a month all the way through it. It's such an unbelievable record. It's such a great record. And even like he's a guy. Well, I know. Also, I guess he put out a song. Did he put out a song they just put out like a right wing song or something about COVID restrictions, which is kind of weird.
I'm not saying these songs about COVID restrictions.
Yeah, him like it's getting too crazy. Like it's like loosely based off COVID restrictions. But I think it was him and Eric Clapton. Not Eric Clapton. Who was it? I forget who it was.
Yeah, I think it might be Eric Clapton. Yeah, because he's
Eric Clapton. Yeah. But even with all that, it's like the guy is absolutely. And like, also, I'm a huge fan of The Last Waltz. I've watched that about 300 times, and his part in the last, like his version of Caravan in The Last Waltz is, first off, his outfit is just, I don't know if you guys have seen The Last Waltz.
Yeah, a long time.
Oh, it's so good. I think it's the best concert movie. Also, there's a lot of parallels to stand up in it when they're doing the interviews with them. Some of the shit they're saying about road stuff and this is like so similar to stand up, but yeah, Van Morrison just comes out in this like way too tight, like half an acrobat looking shirt with a vest on. It's like just an awful 70s outfit. But the version of Caravan, like I'll listen to that one over the other one because it's just so perfect.
You know, you say you didn't like, Brown Eyed Girl is a song that, because FM radio
overplayed. Yeah.
FM radio killed it. But then there were songs that FM radio played that still I still love. I mean, like I think a song like Wild Night, Jackie Wilson Said, I mean, those songs were played a lot on FM radio too, and they still stood the test of time.
They do. And like you said, Into the Mystics is huge, and that was I don't get sick of Into the Mystic, or Jackie Wilson or any of the ones you mentioned. No, it's just that one. I think just sheer numbers. The amount of time it was played, I think it was just even more. I think if you had a chart, if you had a bar graph of how much from the years of 1980 whatever to 2000 that it was played, it was probably off the charts. Probably insane.
Yeah,
that's why
I like that with Guns N' Roses, dude. I loathe Paradise City.
Yeah, I can see that.
Fucking hate it. I have a Guns N' Roses flag.
Yeah, but you still like the guitar lead in it, Sean?
Listen, it's one of those songs that like they always close with it. So I'm that guy who leaves right before there, and I'm halfway home before before the fireworks and like the streamers are going down. There's just those things. Like those big artists always have that one. I hate Stairway to Heaven. It's the worst song.
No, it's so great.
Despise Stairway to Heaven. Like I was just listening to Zeppelin yesterday. Fucking great Immigrant Song and Kashmir, just brilliant songs. Stairway to Heaven, next. I can't do it. Even like somewhat like Paranoid by Ozzy, like by Sabbath. Like I'll fast forward for like all the big songs too. I want to hear like the deeper shit.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, they can play a little bit more Snowblind, The Children of the Grave on
National Acrobat. Yeah, stuff like that.
Another rated song by Van Morrison, which really never got enough airplay, was a song like Ballerina.
Oh, unbelievable. Great song.
Right.
What's the one? The Way Young Lovers Do is fantastic. The Sweet Thing is like, once again, like it's Astral Weeks, but it's just so good. Ballerina is unbelievable. Crazy Face. I have Crazy Face on my Spotify now. It pops up in my on repeat thing for the past 3 months because I won't stop listening to Crazy Face.
When you did Letterman, was there a musical act on?
No, it was who was it? But no, yes, it was MGMT, I think. That
oh wow.
I think that's was the musical guest, and then it was who was the other guest? Wow, I've been drinking a lot. I'm like losing all my memories. I forget who the other. It was an actress was the other guest, and she was very nice. But yeah, I forget who exactly it was. But I think it was MGMT was the band.
It would have been pretty cool if it would have been Van Morrison, wouldn't it?
Oh my God, I would have freaked out. Yeah, absolutely.
I watched SNL from last night, and Zoe Kravitz is hosting. Right? Why would you not get her father to be the fucking musical guest?
I don't know. That
Why?
sounds like a no-brainer.
Spanish girl on. She was singing in Spanish. I had no idea what she was fucking saying the whole goddamn time. Never heard this girl before. Like, isn't that like a cool moment that you can do? Because they've had
I'll tell you why. It's not because it's not for us. That's why.
Well, yeah. I mean, they've had bands on that like don't have
we're about 15 15 this.
Dude, like, every time I watch
it, I don't even know who she is. I'm like, you aren't supposed to know who she is.
I've been very vocal. Is that like my dream was always to write for SNL, and like I take a step back now, and I'm like 45. Like, and I lean a little more right than I do left. There's no way on earth that I'm ever going to work on SNL. Ever.
You're going to write for Greg Gutfeld.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty fucking much.
I just think that's what they have that whole theory about who the age when you were. Whatever the cast was when you were 15 is the one that you think is the best SNL cast. They just are trained. The whole algorithm of SNL is to just relate to like teenagers, but you think it's this timeless thing because it's such an institution, I think. But they are totally aiming all their comedy at like younger people, I think.
Oh yeah,
and that's why
I think it's more like 8 years. It's like an 8-year swing. Like you go through like I remember like when I was growing up, it was always like the Mike Myers, Dana Carvey, and stuff like that. And then there was a whole period where it was kind of like it wasn't that great. And then like the Kristen Wiggs come on, and then boom, then it's got a little dead for it. Now it's like fucking Kenan Thompson's been on there for 39 fucking years, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
And like
I think comedians get that though. You're like, hey, you saw a good deal and you took it. Like you're like that's a lot of money over 16 years of doing that.
Why would you leave that?
I would
Why
never
would you leave it? I also think like it's so much easier. And now I guess he's leaving now this year or something, right?
Yeah, it's last year.
Yeah. And the other thing is that he like the way it used to be was like you had to leave to do other stuff. Remember all those guys had to leave to do movies, like Farley and all those guys. He did a sitcom while he was there.
Yeah.
Like he did. I guess if you're willing to do the work, they're like, hey, and you've been there for so long and you're Kenan Thompson, I guess you just do that. But the way it used to be was like they were so strict, it seemed like to me. They were like, okay, you leave and you move on to your next thing. But I guess he probably realized it's like a different world out there. So he like him leaving SNL, I think he saw the past, 7 years at least. It's not guaranteed he'd have this huge career because movies are kind of done. And if he didn't get a TV show that worked, he kind of could have gone into obscurity. So why not stay and take the paycheck?
I agree.
Tim Meadows.
Like Tim Meadows, exactly. Same kind of thing.
Because after he left the show, what is he doing?
Stories,
ladies man, that was it.
I was gonna say, he did that while he was on SNL. But after he left SNL, what have you really seen him in?
Listen, not everybody could be on SNL and fuck Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's become right. It's just this thing
he's
where
not even on SNL anymore. When was the last time you seen him on SNL?
He was in rehab. That's why.
Yeah.
No, seriously. He was in rehab.
Sean, before we let you go, I just wanted to ask you one last thing. Since the pandemic, where do you see the direction of this whole business going, and how has it changed?
I think the way that it's changed is that I think the way it's changed is that instead of it being, I talked about this a lot with friends and stuff. Instead of it being, and this is already happening. Instead of it just being a certain path, that the way it was when we started was that the way I always pictured it was like, you're in New York, you start working clubs, you get a late night set, you get a Comedy Central half hour, you graduate from New York, you move out to LA, you either do stand up out there or do the road from out there and maybe get a movie thing or you sell your own TV show or your own sitcom. And then you go from there, hour special, all that. It was a more like very, very regimented, like this seems to be the path.
A structure.
Yeah. Now, because of the advent of YouTube and all the social media stuff, things that I am trying my best at, but I just can't figure it out. I don't know what the thing is. So I have barely any followings on those things. And but it's all DIY. So the way it used to be was like, remember it was like, if you had an hour special, that was like a crowning achievement. Like the HBO specials were like, holy shit, even as close as like a Bill Burr thing or something. Now people, which good for them, people are finding, hey, if I put my special on YouTube, I can make myself a living off this and another stream of revenue by putting my Cash App up there or having people come out to shows because of it.
Sam Morril did that.
Yeah, so did Norman and all those guys, and they had a big fan base, and they doubled down on that, and they had a little bit, So I think it's changed, but I do think one thing people don't talk about is that you call it, it can only be DIY for a certain amount of time. It's so ingrained now that DIY is a path that guys like your Schultzes or your Andrew Schultz or your even a Norman, but they kind of stick to themselves, or like your Chris DiStefano's or Santino in LA. I don't think people want to say that, but like you're just industry now. Like you're just a different side of the industry, because if those guys, or a Rogan would be the biggest example of that. But even that's so much controversy now. It's like whatever. But like, which is so stupid. But like even things like that, it's like, well, you can like a guy like Rogan can pretend he's like, I got this podcast and it took off. It's like, well, you were also on 15 TV shows before that. But yes, but you're making people's careers your industry. You're just a different side of it in a smaller scale, but you can make somebody's live career easily. You have them on your show 10 times, they're selling out at least a couple of weekends a month. You know what I'm saying? So what'd you say? Yeah,
you're 100% correct. I mean, I have a really good friend who's, performed all over the world and was on Maron's show. And that was like the big fucking break, like doing comedy 25 years, having Showtime specials and stuff like that, and still working these dingy clubs, goes on Maron once, boom, blows the fuck up.
Yeah.
So Sean, then the next thing is, how relevant is doing Colbert now or Kimmel? Does that mean anything, or you're better off going on like Andrew Schultz's show, which I think is great, Rogan, Maron, like any one of those, which would be better for your career?
I think it's always worth it to do it, but what it does is it pales in comparison to what it did. I just did this Tonight Show thing. I got some gigs from it, but it didn't do it. Even Letterman did way more.
It was a different time.
A way different time.
And it wasn't even that long ago.
You know what it's worth now to do, because they know everything lives online. It's worth it. You do it, you're promoting it. That'll get you into the attention online. And then after it's done, putting clips up, then the clips might get people towards your socials. But the actual airing of it, when it happens, the numbers are just not there. And it's just not, it doesn't have that same thing to it, because everybody's looking at, when they're watching Fallon, they're watching him for his games and they're watching it on YouTube. So the viewership has changed so drastically that comics, of course, it's worth it, because I was like, hey, Tonight Show, of course. Like, why wouldn't you? But career-wise, I think, Rogan to me seems like the modern version of what Carson used to do for people, or maybe not now as much since he moved to Spotify, but still strong. Like, you're on that show, you have millions upon millions of people hearing you and hearing your information and listening to you. So I think that definitely does better for comedians, those things. But it doesn't mean that I would do Tonight Show 10 more times if I had the opportunity. It just,
of course,
I actually had an idea for a show that I wanted to do where it was like only late night sets, because I was like, I think the art of the late night set is a thing that's going to go away because people are just watching 1 minute clips on Instagram. But I love the idea.
The late night show itself is going to go away.
I think it probably will, or it'll be in different format. I think Fallon,
it's changed so much now.
Yeah, it's changed so much now. Like Fallon, the way he changed it is what it's going to be. And then even kind of, it'll probably mutate from there if I had to guess. But I think
none of these shows do great in the ratings, by the way.
No.
They're
so that's why they have to.
They're getting killed by cable news. I mean,
Gutfeld's number one. Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Actually makes sense to me because if you think about it, who's watching live TV, it's older people. And then if you do watch Colbert, and I always liked Colbert, but if you watch that show, he's very vocal about his politics. So I could see why people are like, I can't watch this. I'm going to watch the guy. Now they have a comedy show on my news channel I watch all day. I'm watching that. And there's people that like are parents' age and younger, like about 10 years younger, that are doing it. And that's the ones who watch live TV. That's why the ratings, it makes complete sense to me because of that. Nobody, even people like our age, like nobody's watching. I had YouTube TV. I got rid of it. Just because it was too much, and I couldn't even get friends and family to like want to join in on it. Cause you're supposed to like join in on YouTube TV because everybody's just streaming and whatever it is. So you have a whole population of people who aren't watching live TV. But my aunts in Jersey and my mom, she still watches live TV. So if she probably, I don't know if she watches which one she watches, but so that's why it makes sense to me. So I think that's how it's just going to change. But I think what people don't realize is like, oh my God, there's so many great famous late night sets that are just going to be kind of like become archaic because I don't know, maybe they're going to have somebody come up and do like a late night minute because then they can make it just an Instagram clip or a thing on whatever the newest app is. And there's a lot of comics that are like mastered it. Like Norman's very good at it. This guy, I don't know if you guys know Jeff Caldwell, who's a guy like an unsung hero of like late night sets. That last Norm Macdonald set on Letterman is one of my favorite things in the world. Jay Larson set on Conan from like 10 years ago it was like one long story. I think there's an art to it that's going to be lost because nobody wants to sit and even watch 5 minutes because I have ADD and people have less attention span than I do now at this point. Everybody just wants their 10-second, like if you look up, not look up, but you hear people pontificate about how to do TikTok and stuff like this. They're like, you gotta engage with people in 1 second. That's why the videos do well. So you have to like say the word. You have to be like farts. Like it can't just be the bit or the 5-minute set. It has to be like sex is cool. And then everybody's like, I like sex. And they're watching the video. And it's kind of like really to people our age, I think it's like really disappointing. It sucks. Like I'd rather it be the other way where it's like, don't get me wrong. I don't mind adapting. I think you don't want to become stale, but you also want to have appreciation for what stand-up is. And then I think that's just going to go more and more away. I think it's just going to leave.
That's a great point. And it's almost like everything that's different than stand-up, because stand-up is like the build-up and then it's the suspense, or the tension, right. And then it's the release, which gives you the big laugh. Like right. A guy like Jesselneck. You ever hear his bit about hey, did you read your Bible?
No, I've heard it.
Okay, it's almost like a 2.5, 3 minute buildup. And if you tap out, you're not getting the pleasure of that release. Yeah. But then like the punchline is, I mean, the first time I heard it was one of the hardest I've ever laughed in my life.
Right. Exactly. And then I think that, don't get me wrong, it'll still exist, but I think it'll be like put it this way, like, did you guys watch that earthquake special?
Not yet.
I heard it's phenomenal.
It's awesome. And all it reminds you of is like, you're in a club watching this killer veteran comic who's just an absolute murderer, just kill, joke after joke after joke, which you don't see as much anymore because I don't know, you kind of have like, the Chappelle, who I think is amazing, but it's like, hey, you got too self-important, you're famous, you're not a stand-up anymore. But you watch a guy like Roy Wood Jr., who people should be paying attention to, and they're kind of not as much as they should have. Like, and then you see Earthquake, who's a guy who probably didn't get what he deserved for 30 years, and then now people are watching this going, oh my God. Like, actually, he's done the best job of recreating what it feels like to be in a club, because that's why stand-up's going to stick around, I think, because, well, not that it's going to go away, obviously it's doing pretty well, but I mean the going to a live club, having that shared experience in a club is never going to be replicated outside of that moment. So I think you're always going to have that exist. So the idea is being the best version within that world, in my opinion. But that's why I'm saying, as far as like, that's why I think it's separate than the rest of this. The rest of this is all kind of gravy to try to like make your nut so you can actually do the thing in the club and the way you want to do it, I think,
Yeah. What do you think about like these TikTok, YouTube guys who are able to do things on online, get a huge following, then they go out and try and do it live? You find that, because I've seen it, and don't you see like these audiences getting like disappointed, like this is not what we really paid for, or it's like, oh, it's so much better like on TikTok, but like when you see the live show of it, they don't have like the chops to really do it because they haven't been really doing like on stage for a number of years.
Every time I see one of those, I think of the GIF, the Michael Jackson GIF, where like he's sitting there with the popcorn from fucking Thriller. Yeah, you do your TikTok. Go ahead, let me see it.
I think that I think you're kind of right. I think that yes, but it's one of these things where I don't blame them more than I blame like the clubs. I get why the clubs do it, but the club is basically the bar business, right? So they're just like,
exactly.
That's why they call that aspect of the business personal appearance. They're not calling it like a personal appearance that guaranteed kills. You know, like I think they don't. The clubs, I think some care about what they're putting up, but I think a lot of them are like, hey, we're putting asses in the seats, and we don't care if you read the phone book up there. If you're selling out and you're making us $50,000 in a weekend, we will we'll have you. And so don't get me wrong. I think that's also the great
divide.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that when it comes to these TikTok guys, it's like I've seen a ton of funny stuff on TikTok and very produced and these great sketches. But yeah, live. That's why live comedy is very different. But I think that the business side of this, you have a club owner or a club booker going, yeah, this isn't going great. But if he's, you have him back 3 months later and he's going to sell out again, what do I care? Like it's like nobody. Only the people are going to be disappointed in the moment, and some clubs are going to go, "We're not having this guy back." And like, I think it would have to be really atrocious for. I think a lot. That's why a lot of these guys, what they do, I think some of them bring comics and have them go after, so they almost have like a stand-up show after like the personal appearance. And I think a lot of them do 20 minutes of like decent to mediocre,
like
whatever.
A TED Talk.
And then they just go in the front of the room and they go, personal appearance time, and they go, here's pictures and selfies, and then and the audience, they love them. So they can do that. They're like, cool, I'll just come meet you instead of having to watch you do legitimate stand-up. Like that's why stand-up is different than everything else, because you can very easily tell that it's not stand-up. But hey, you can stand in front of a room and say hello and be kind of funny and then give me a picture and I'm going to share it with my friends. Like that's like taking over in a lot of respects. But there are a lot of clubs that won't even do that bullshit,
Sean, what do you have going on that we could promote for you that our fans could kind of like follow you on? What are your socials?
My socials on Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Shawnee Time. It's SCANYTIME. And also I have a brand new podcast called The Brand New Jerks. That's on wherever you listen to podcasts. And also we have a YouTube page. It's basically a podcast for recovering people pleasers, because me and my buddy Ray realized that we want to be more assertive in life. So it's us just messing around, but also trying to figure out that balance between becoming more assertive but not becoming assholes. So we like talk about that a lot, but it's just us making fun of each other and joking around. But it's called Brand New Jerks. We have a YouTube and TikTok, and you can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Google, all that jazz.
Folks, check out Brand New Jerks anywhere you can find podcasts. Sean, final words?
Fuck ambush shows. That's going to be on my epitaph.
I've seen Sean Donnelly's name for a very long time. I've seen clips. I've always laughed, and I'm glad he was on the show. This was actually a very fun episode, and now we can bullshit a little more going forward. I like this a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sean, that's
so funny. That's the mix of having the final words thing. I thought you meant the final words me. I was like, oh, yeah, all right. It makes way more sense for Sean. Yeah.
Listen, man, thank you so much for doing this, and I'll see you in the city. And
I won't.
Well, I'm talking to Donnelly on this one, but
sounds good. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, guys.
My pleasure, man. Take care.